Oh, you fill my lungs with sweetness, and you fill my head with you. Shall I write it in a letter? Shall I try to get it down? Oh, you fill my head with pieces.
I hope you all got a chance to read the program because it kind of explains what this show is and it explains what you're about to see. We do touch upon some very sensitive subject matter and it may act as a trigger to some people in the audience. If you ever feel uncomfortable and you feel like you need to leave, that's no problem. Just try to do it as quietly and respectfully of the people around you and you can make your way right up to the exit. It's not going to be locked at all. And then once you're ready to come back in, just again, enter quietly and respectfully of everyone in the group. I don't want anyone to feel like they're stuck in here. If you didn't get a chance to leave your email on the list,
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Major depressive disorder.
Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Depression.
Borderline personality disorder.
General anxiety disorder.
Pseudo-psychotic dissociative disorder.
Depressed.
General anxiety unspecified.
Bipolar.
Selective
Sound
sensory
Anxious.
alone, worthless.
Crazy.
Mental illness is a really interesting topic to me because it's something that a lot of people just don't talk about. My dad is a psychiatrist, so I always grew up hearing words like schizophrenia and a lot of stuff about homeless people being mentally ill as well, just around the house. It's not like it was something that was never talked about because my dad was always doing stuff with it, but I just never thought that I could have it, ever. It's not something that ever crossed my mind because, well, I was generally the happiest kid. People would always say, I was famous when I was younger for skipping down the street and singing as if no one could hear me and just generally being a really happy kid and almost very, very optimistic. And I still am, but I've grown up a lot because mental illness definitely played a part in that it helped me grow up. And I can say that now because I'm out of it. Well, for the most part. I don't know. Because this is something I always wonder about. It's nobody's perfect. Perfect health, perfect anything. So everyone's got their little quirks and grooves, and that doesn't make you sick. But that also doesn't make... It seems like everyone's always going to be a little bit... have something to deal with. Have some mental, obstacle to jump over. So anyway, I guess, which story am I going to tell?
I think the first time the actual words mental illness were thrown around was when I was in grade 10. My two best friends had gone away on a semester abroad trip to Italy, and my family couldn't afford to send me, and I didn't even ask if I could go because I just knew it wouldn't be realistic for my family. So I was kind of alone, I guess. I mean, I would get up, go to class, but I didn't have much of a social circle. I'd keep to myself a lot, get lunch in the cafeteria and awkwardly look around for somewhere to sit or go and eat in the bathroom or go and eat outside by myself. And I just kind of started not liking going to school. I'd get jeers or mean looks from kids in the hallway I didn't even know. People would make comments. I remember one time this guy I didn't even know sent me a message on Facebook, just I think he was a grade younger. I didn't even recognize his name. I think I had to look into him to figure out who he was. Sent me a message just to be oh, I see you by yourself at school all the time. You're a loser. Nah, you're always alone. And I just thought why is that even necessary? Why would you do that to somebody? But anyways, I was actually creeped out by it because he knew who I was enough to point it out and make comments about my life, whereas I didn't recognize his name at all. And so my anxiety actually started then, and it got really bad. I couldn't handle going to school. So I would My mom would drive me to school in the mornings. Not because she could, because she worked full time, but because she would take an extra hour specifically so she could get me out of bed, drag me physically out of bed, convince me to go to school for the day. Maybe get me some juice or a muffin, but then on the way to school, my anxiety would be so bad, I would throw up at the car window every single morning. Get to class missing probably half of first period, but that was a good day. That was like, at least you got to school. But then, in between first and second period, I would run outside and throw up in the grass again, from my anxiety being just so consuming. We didn't really know what it was, what was wrong with me. I was sad because I was sick all the time. I didn't have anybody I could talk to. My two good friends were gone. So eventually my family connected me to our family doctor, who gave me this really generic depression questionnaire. But I was like 15, 16 at the time, and it was like, oh, let's not be hasty. Maybe she's just hormonal or it's just a phase. So they did this test which seemed to indicate that I might suffer from depression. And it's kind of a blur from there, but it was just this psychiatrist visit and that psychologist visit and this specialist and that specialist. I eventually had to do a whole bunch of other tests which confirmed my diagnosis, which officially to this day is major depressive disorder. And generalized anxiety disorder, specifically social anxiety. And at least having a name and a description of what it is I'm dealing with makes it a little bit easier to cope with, a little bit easier to explain, and having a face and a name for something makes it a little bit less scary, a little bit less daunting. And since then, it's just been me trying to cope and deal on a day-to-day basis.
I just felt defenseless. I didn't really know who to turn to. It would affect everything as far as I know. Like every time I would go home, or at least to my res, and I would try to sleep, I would not be able to until like 5 or 4 in the morning every day. And I would still have 8:30 class every day. And I would try to like maintain that. As I was in class, I would get a bit of breakdowns in a sense. Like it wasn't more so that I would show it, but it was just that I could feel it and I just couldn't focus at all. My mind was racing, I didn't know what to do, and I just kept fidgeting. I guess you could call it anxiety. So yeah, I guess to wrap it up, the first time I first noticed or experienced it was first year university, when it all came back. Should I go full detailed, or? To be honest, like, I hadn't really thought about sexual abuse since maybe 12 years old when it ended. So that's about 8 years ago. And then when the rookie party happened, I thought it would be just fun and games. But this whole initiation process, they started to get to me and bring back a full of memories I thought I had like swept away. At first it was alright, but then it started to get a little eerie. Told to shut up, blindfolded, shoved in the car. Not really face masks, but at the same time, threatened to stay quiet. As we would go out of the car, we were placed in line. I don't really remember what happened. There was a bright light, but we were still blindfolded. Forced into the basement, and then from there it just got bad because I raised my hand to ask to go outside because I wanted air. But these elders, so they call themselves, basically those who are not rookies, they would force these rookies to do whatever they wanted. So as I raised my hand to ask to go outside, I was not given permission. I was told to put it down, and I fully remember slowly whimpering and putting down my hand. And because it wasn't like a quick gesture, someone came right up behind me, forced my hand behind my back, started talking to me in my ear, and started caressing me in a weird way. And I knew, like, at that moment in time, everything just came back. Like, every single memory just rushed through me. I remember crying like there was no tomorrow. I was finally given permission to go outside. I didn't want to be there. Every face I saw scared me because I knew no one in the group. It was a foreign place to me. I had almost no sense of comfort. I was gone. And since then, which was roughly October 2012, No, yeah, 2012, October. It's just been gone. My studies have been declining. I've been going to see counselors, shrinks, doctors like here at McMaster. Obviously the only thing that could help her heal was time.
Member of mine, actually, there was a case in which I was being sexually abused for an amount of 5 years. This person, during that time, witnessed me lose 40 pounds, so I had an eating disorder. I started smoking a lot of pot. I was very anxious all the time, and the depression continued throughout that time. And when all of this was over, I developed much more severe symptoms, and I now have something called borderline personality disorder. So, because of what happened with this member in my family who was abusing me, people kind of describe it like a cult. Like, if you know those girls who get brainwashed by their cult leaders, and at the end of the day they defend them because they don't understand that they're confused. Well, when all this came to an end, it was very abrupt, and he tried to frame me. And I was very young at the time. He tried to blame the child, so that sent a lot of confusion into my head. I thought maybe it was my fault. Maybe I did this. At the time, I was very secretive about what was going on with me. It was all internalized, so most days I would just go to school and I wouldn't listen anyway. I would just be in my own head. So I came to the conclusion that it didn't matter if I was there or not. I could just teach it to myself if I wanted to. So I became an at-home student where I just brought all my books home and I did all my work, and I told my teachers that, you know, just things were going on in my life. So I asked them for their consideration, and if I got it, I took it and I ran with it. I got a lot of extensions, you know, just things like that. And at the end, when my abuse case was exposed, I just left school. I said that I was taking a leave of absence, and I never went back.
I used to do was whenever I felt really overwhelmed, I would get really physical, not like aggressive to other people, but I'd need to get energy out and I'd need to leave the room. So there was a really awesome ravine behind my school, and I would, in the middle of class, when I was like, this teacher is stupid, I can't even handle the information that's being given to me, and a lot of my classes were just like watch other people perform, just watch commentary. So I wasn't engaged, really. I could be if I wanted to, but
And he's been there for as long as I can remember, like since I was a toddler, which is why they don't think I'm schizophrenic, but we're not entirely sure about that yet. But yeah, so I just always hear this voice. And I literally didn't know until about 12 months ago that that was odd or different. Because, I mean, when people talk about having conversations with themselves or arguments with themselves, I don't know, I thought they were talking to other people. Like, I know now that that's weird and it sounds completely strange to me, but, I don't know, it also made sense to me because when I argue with myself, half of it is me just, I don't know, thinking in the abstract, and the other half is his
very clear, well-articulated argument. Who took first-year logic with me like he knows his shit. But nobody knows me better, because he literally is me. And that's been a big struggle for me to decide whether or not I need to accept that, because I don't like what he says. He is very dangerous. If it was a multiple personality thing, then I could call it someone else doing these things that would cause me harm. But because it's a dissociative thing, it's probably just me and my depression and my suicidal thinking. So like, when I get depressed, I'll just be sitting there, and then there will be this well-thought-out argument by someone who knows me better than anyone else in the world, just being like, you know you should kill yourself, right? Like, obviously. And even just, everything you're doing, everything you touch, you're just making it worse. And even though you're trying to help, I mean, your little brother is in denial, and he's just going to get hurt eventually. And your older brother is oblivious, and if he doesn't get repercussions for his actions, he's just going to keep running headfirst into this wall until he concusses himself. And your dad is just, you can't fix it. You can't fix it. And every time you try, you just make him angrier. And then when you try to talk about this with your mom, you're just upsetting her. Like, she gets so upset. And she's just like your little brother. She doesn't like conflict. She just comes once to dig her head in the sand. And I don't blame her. It's just, I just wanted so bad for everyone else to be okay. And I couldn't do that. And I just kept failing, and failing, and failing, and failing, and failing, and failing. And everyone at school hated me. I couldn't walk down the hall without being called a fat bitch. I don't know why, middle school was torture, whatever. Honestly, they would look at the smart, pretty girl and know they were never going to be that they were never going to be that, and so they tore her down. But little did they know that she might be schizophrenic and have an abusive father, so like, I like to think they might have acted a little differently, but I don't know, middle schoolers are not known for their compassion. But yeah, so I didn't tell anyone that I was feeling this way, because that just would have hurt them. I still don't like telling them. It's just, I didn't want to trouble them, you know? And that's what I thought of it as, like a trouble. I don't know, it just seems so fleeting, like that word just doesn't resonate, it doesn't have any weight. I didn't want to trouble my mother. It's like I got a spot on my petticoat and I didn't want to worry her because it would send her into hysterics, but it was like, no, this was serious.
ADHD comes through a lot in class, I find. It's a matter of retaining the information. Like, I'll go to class, and I'll understand everything, and I'm surrounded by people who are confused, and I can explain everything to them. And this has been like the theme throughout university. I can learn everything on the spot. I understand it very well. Content makes sense to me, and actual like concepts make sense to me, but being able to replicate them on paper the next day is impossible. Sitting in class, I understand everything, but it's honestly like in one ear and out the other in like 15 minutes or half an hour. Retaining information is a big problem. It's like I can sort of focus in class, but it's not, like it's lost pretty quickly. There's like, always wayward thoughts, and I don't know if that's like the ADHD or me just being human, but I think a lot about a lot of things. And it probably doesn't help with the what's the word I'm looking for? Self-diagnosed anxiety, yeah. If you think too much as a nervous person, I think it kind of puts a toll on you mentally. You know, like, hopefully at some point I'll stop taking my ADHD meds, because it's weird. I find like an influx of thoughts and ideas in my head, like, it's almost like that's where my creativity is. a lot, and it helps me almost like calm down. It helps me like plan things. And I find that like when I'm on the medication, I think a lot more linearly. Like it's like do this, do this, do this, do this, compared to like where there's like it's like my brain's like a branch with like a bunch of big tree, and I can think about a lot, like 1,000 things at once. So eventually, I think like once I don't need to be, well, once I'm not being judged academically, I think I'll move away from the pills because like I know what I need to perform better, and I guess I'm just like pills. I guess I don't like them. Like I said, I just thinking about 1,000 things at once. It's weird to think of because it makes me worry a little, but at the same time, I don't know. What's the point of not being worried about anything? Almost, it's it's always nice to have something to think about.
So, I drew this, it's like this really weird pagan ceremonial thing, but I couldn't see anyone, but I knew that there was people watching me. And it's really dark, and then someone will come forward, and it's always someone different. Like, it's my mom, or it's my brother, or it's my boyfriend, or it's my best friend, or my cousin who passed away when he was 14 of cancer, or my teachers, or my profs, or my doctors, people close to me. And I couldn't see anyone, but I knew that there was people watching me. It was weird. Like, I would walk up to where I thought I knew someone was, and I would think I would know who it was as well. Like, who would be watching me that didn't want me to see them? And then someone would step forward, and it was always someone like, it was my little brother, a lot. And that was so hard, so hard. I mean, I love him more than I love, like, knitting. Yeah, it's intense. And he tolerates me, and it's adorable. But, yeah, so they just come forward, and they're, like, really gentle and really nice. And they just have this smile on their face, and they take my hand to say, it's time. They always say the same thing. It's like this scripted thing that I can never really get right when I'm awake. But just about how, like, everybody leaves scars and everybody leaves marks. And I was doing that more, I guess. I don't know. I was just making everything worse and harder for everyone, and there was so much time and so many resources going into someone who was a lost cause. So, why bother? And the point when I was most afraid was when I wasn't afraid anymore when I woke up. It didn't bother me at all. And I don't know, it was like I used to wake up screaming and then I just didn't. And everything was fine. It was like 4 a.m. and I crawled into bed with my mom and I was just like, I think I have some serious issues. And I think I really need help. Like, I know I'm seeing a psychiatrist, but I think it's time I start being really honest.
When I heard about depression at first, I thought about those commercials. You know, people being depressed could ask for help, hotlines. And I just thought it was stupid, like, why don't you just change the subject and make it something happy? Until I got to that position. And I realized, well, fuck me, right? Like, sorry, it's just, the moment that that realization hit me, that's when I saw myself as someone who needed help. But I also saw myself as a failure just because, like, if I can't help anyone else, I mean, I can even help myself. Same thing with PTSD. Actually, no, not really. It's just the moment that that realization hit me, I mean, I fully wanted to talk about it. But, like, at the same time, I don't know. I guess for me, basically the way I saw it was just like, people go through it, shit happens, why not? It was mainly the depression part that threw me off guard. Before I actually talked about it, it was big, there was a lot of contemplation. But basically the way I saw it was just like a thermometer. Like, as the meter rises, it can only take so much. And once it gets to that peak, it just explodes. And that's what happened to me. I fully wanted to talk about it, but it took me a while to get the courage just to even get it out. I don't even know how that happened, really. I guess for me, just at the same time, I wanted someone to know what I was going through. And I didn't care who, and I didn't know why. I just wanted somebody to know.
It was tough, feeling like there wasn't a person that I could talk to at all, or anyone. I wouldn't talk to her. I wouldn't talk to my roommates, and those are some of the people. Well, there's 6 of the people who I'm in contact the most with during my day. Your mom, or your dad, but I didn't. I isolated myself from them. I chose not to mix them up in my adult life, which was a fucking mistake. Stupid of me. I'd cook it up inside all the time, just like absolutely have. I don't know. I'd flip out, and that's the reason why we actually broke up. It's because I did that all the time. I just constantly cooked the stress, and it might have been a combination of that and not lack of communication. Every now and then, how do you communicate with someone who's not telling you anything? And the frustration of that built up, and I'd flip out. That was definitely the reason why we broke up. And then it became a cycle of like not knowing who to talk to, and getting angry and angry, more upset and more upset. And I had different ways that I express. It's not the word. I expel the frustration. Sometimes it'd be anger. Sometimes it would be crying and feeling like garbage. First year of university, I think I cried more than the previous 18 years of my life combined. It was tough. And then I realized that there wasn't anyone listening, and I stopped doing the crying and I started doing the angry instead, which was really counterproductive, and it hurt a lot of people around me. Drove the people that I love the most away from me. You know, after a while you kind of got to redeem yourself a bit. People tend to look at the bad when they look back at it. People remember the bad over the good. So, yeah, I mean, a little self-judgment, I guess. What can you do? You make mistakes when you're younger.
I'll admit, I was guilty of being critical of girls who found themselves in abusive relationships. I didn't understand how it could happen, and then I found myself in one, and I didn't even realize I was in one until about a year into the relationship, because on the surface he was charming and nice and, you know, sweet, and could just win over anybody. Like, all my family and friends liked him. He seemed like a really good guy. But underneath it, and behind closed doors, I guess, he was a completely different person. And he started cutting me off from friends that were just mine. We had to have a couple of friends, or friends that were his, or our group of friends became mostly his, and I didn't have anyone of my own that I could go to or talk to. And then he started becoming physically abusive, which I knew wasn't okay, and that's obviously where I kind of drew the line and tried to break up with him. But he got more physical where I did. So I ended the relationship, and I told him, if you come after me again, I will go to the police. It hadn't gotten to that point, and I didn't want that because I knew friends, I'd seen people go through experiences like that, and it was the last thing I wanted. So I just kind of wanted to deal with it on my own. Once I got him to understand, the relationship seemed to end amicably. So we decided one time, okay, let's meet back up, and I'll give you back some of my stuff, and I'll have you give back some of yours, and just have coffee and see how the other one's doing. So we wound up back at his place to get back some of our stuff, and it ended up being kind of late at night. So he said, why don't you stay here tonight? You know, I'll sleep on the couch, and you can have my room, and the door shuts, and it's fine. So, against my better judgment, but I'd known the guy for over a year and a half. We've been dating for a year and a half, and I trusted him enough to be a good guy. So I ended up falling asleep and waking up in the wee hours of the morning. He's in the bedroom. So I asked, what are you doing here? And it was just like, oh, don't worry, I'm just getting something. It's fine. So I'm a really heavy sleeper. I wasn't really lucid anyway. So I remember falling back asleep. But I wake up again and he's in the bed. So I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it was just, oh, don't worry, it's fine. I don't know what he said, but I sort of kind of fell back asleep. But I look up again and see he's moving closer to me. And so I told him to leave and get out, and there was an altercation, and he ended up sexually assaulting me. I called a friend who lived in my residence building, and he came and met me. The guy actually chased me, like, out of his house. I managed to get away because people could hear, like, a commotion in the neighborhood and started coming outside. He obviously didn't want that to happen. And then he saw my friend waiting for me at the intersection. So it was like, great, she probably told somebody. So he went back, and so I said, don't bother me, don't touch me, don't come after me, and I won't call the police. I don't want to do that. Just don't ever speak to me again. And I didn't hear from him again, which was great for a couple of months, because yeah, I mean, obviously that would affect anybody negatively, and if you're dealing with mental health, it's certainly not going to help. I couldn't handle it. It got way too much for me. In addition to the actual incident itself, because he had cut me off from some of my own friends, we only had his friends. And of course, he immediately told them, don't talk to her, she's crazy. Well, I don't know what he told them, but they were all obviously on his side, and when it comes to things like rape, nobody wants to talk about it. There's a lot of victim blaming, there's a lot of slut shaming. I certainly didn't want to talk about it, and nobody asked me from my side of the story. So people just assumed that I was making things up or trying to make him look bad because I was scorned or bitter that he broke up with me, which wasn't even the case because I broke up with him. But anyways, it was bad. I lost a lot of friends. Was even more isolated, was even more alone. So I decided to go back home. In addition to not being able to make it to most of my classes for various reasons, I kind of thought, okay, clearly things aren't working out here. I'd better cut my losses and go home.
The problem with being depressed and confining yourself to isolation is that you often overthink things. And so I found that I was creating a lot of issues and placing a lot of blame and trying to find out why I was angry and not functioning like other people. And so I took a lot of anger out on my mother. The rest of my family and I actually got closer, and my relationships with my friends, I see them, you know, sometimes for months and months every single day, and then I could go months without even like calling them once or twice every couple of weeks. It just depends on my mood. Relationships with boyfriends, borderline personality disorder is something, it's categorized as a fear of abandonment. And so if at any point I feel insecure or, I don't know, just my anxious, like, energy takes over and I can't be myself.
You do, you close yourself off when you're a nervous person all the time, when you're anxious, when you're worried. You kind of forget that there's people around you that want to be helpful, but you don't let them. Because you're worried about judgment, or you're worried about, you just don't do it. And sometimes it's just a fact of not doing it, and that could be a big mistake. You come into a cycle of being like, oh, I don't want to listen to them, and then you forget about that, and they don't want to listen to you because you didn't open up those channels of communication when you needed help from the people that you love around you. So it starts with kind of just going around in a circle, and you kind of just feel isolated even though you've got company. And you got people that love you and they're right next to you, sitting right next to you. You still feel alone. And I felt very alone. It's weird. There's people out there that are, they don't have anyone and they're actually alone. But I find with mental health, you kind of make yourself lonely in your own head. When you're surrounded by the people that care for you. And the worst days for me were the days that were always the same. But the same problems would arise. And it wasn't the severity of how shitty it was. It was just constantly happening, you know. And that put a lot of stress on me. Dating someone with, well, at the time, severe anxiety. It was tough. And it took a toll on me mentally, and multiple times because of it, I felt guilty. And I wasn't sure if that's something that I should be doing, because, like, what do you do when you love a person? And there's always, like, this, their habits that they have, and they're constantly worrying and not letting. I always felt like I couldn't talk to her about my problems. She was always talking to me about hers. And I mean, there's tons of problems, like random, and those are some of the harder things to deal with. For instance, like I come back home from I'd have a really hard midterm, like a really, really shitty day, and I'd come home not feeling too well, and I kind of just wanted to be around her, but not talk to her. Just having her around is calming, and I think that's something that everyone should be able to relate to. You know, you don't want to talk to people, but you like to have people you love around you. But I'd just be sitting at my computer, just not talking to her, and she'd look at me, and all of a sudden she'd just start bawling, and I'd be like, what the fuck's going on? And why are you doing this? And this was a constant thing. It happened all the time. And just like, I don't want to have to deal with this, but I do at the same time. There's nothing I could do to make it better, because it'd be like, oh, so what's the problem? And she'd be like, it's nothing. And so I'm like, so why the fuck are you doing this? I mean, this would happen for supposed to like 4 or 5 months, and it happened about 3 or 4 times a week, and it was something I couldn't deal with at the time. I could deal with it. I'd stay around. You know, you're almost scared about talking about your own problems because you don't want to like remind them theirs, or you don't want them to feel like they can't put their trust in you. Not trust. It's like, this is my mentality. If I showed her that I had problems and I had weaknesses, that means that she wouldn't feel comfortable explaining to me what her problems were, because I wasn't like being steady at the table, I guess you needed to be at the time. It was shitty. But at the same time, I don't know, I kind of just dealt with it, and I found a way to deal with everything, and I just let everything go. And it's weird because I know from my perspective, I mean, I know she's probably having the worst time than I did because of all the things that she had to think about. There's probably reasons why she was crying all the time. Maybe she wasn't comfortable enough to talk to me about it, but it was just constant, not knowing what the fuck to do and how to solve the problem and trying to be helpful. But if you're not letting me be helpful, then how can I be helpful with you? Well, there's no looking back on it now.
I think mental illness is inherently selfish. It's very selfish. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's so hard for people around you to deal with it. Because like, it's just, it was always about me all the time. So no wonder my friends got fed up with me, and no wonder my boyfriends broke up with me and stuff like that. I mean, obviously there were like more acute reasons for it, but really it's because when you're there, when that's your life, you are incapable of thinking of anything else except yourself.
That's very, very smart. That's something that's very smart. It's weird. She probably has the same outlook as me, where you just have to kind of fucking deal with things. That's how I look at mental health issues. Selfish is a really good word. I think what makes it selfish is, I don't know, you don't want to make your problems the problems of the people around you, and you want to like throw it in their faces, right? Like, I would never use my issues as excuse. I never use an excuse to the people around me. Fuck, I use an excuse to myself all the time. That's how I justify how shitty I do in school, or how much of an asshole I was. I hope I'm not now. You know, you end up focusing on your problems, and then people vocalize it to you, and you still kind of focus on your problems. It's like, oh, well, I have this problem, so I can justify it because you're physically better than me, because you don't have a brain chemical imbalance, and you don't have the same problems that I do. And people tend to focus on their own problems rather than the people around them. And, I mean, that's what selfish is about it. That's human nature. Like, I'm not going to judge you because, I mean, I think we're all subtly selfish in our lives. We're a selfish species. That's how we survive. I just find that I think we justify a lot of things with it.
So, the first day of this program, we all gather at school, like the 10 of us or whatever, and we start doing these McMaster exercises. So, what's it called? Zone of silence. So, pretty much, you start off with 2 people. You can start off with even 1 person, but we start off with 2 people. Just stand at the front of the class in complete silence and completely neutral for a couple of minutes until they can achieve like really good neutrality. And then the audience tells them like what they thought the scene was about, even though they didn't say anything. And that, yeah, I know. And then, so like one person could be sitting and one person could be standing, and like, what was the scene? Just because it lets you see how people give off different energies just by standing there, and like the different things that they do. So that was like my worst nightmare, because when I had to get up and just stand there, that's like so vulnerable. You can't speak, you can't move, you have to be neutral. And my neutral, I felt, was not neutral. It was like shit. It was like deep, deep sadness, right? So I just got up and I looked at the ground and I was like, I can't do this. I couldn't even handle being in front of the class. And so I went up and I just looked at the ground, and I didn't want to show anyone anything because I was afraid that they would see like how broken I was, pretty much. Like how not ready and right for this program I was, or for this career, or for this life, or for being alive. So I just went and I got down, and afterwards everyone was like, well, you were really stiff, so I think you can do better. Well, fuck you. So, and also I had just got back from Mexico, so I had no clean clothes and I had no food or groceries, and I hadn't cleaned my apartment in a long time, and I had no money at all because we were getting paid in like 2 weeks and I had nothing. So I was just like, I couldn't ask anyone for help because like they would see how unfit I am and like how I can't even take care of myself, and who wants to be friends with that? So I'm walking back to my house after the day with a friend, and I was just like so mad at myself for doing so badly in the class and also for not having any money. And she was just like, hey, are you like, what's up? How was your little break to Mexico? How was your day? And for the first time in a really, really, really long time, I was just like, I have no money, and I have no food, and I have no clean clothes, and I'm so tired, and I'm alone in my apartment, and I don't like it. And she was just like, well, I have laundry at my house, you can come to my house, and like, if you're hungry, I have food, so like, we can have dinner. And I was just shocked. Like, I didn't even know this person that well yet, and I was like, you are being overly kind, was my first reaction. Like, hey, do you think I need pity from you? Well, obviously at that point I did, but that was the first day of that program, and that program ended up changing so much about me. Because a lot of the shows that we did too were things that I was dealing with at the time, like sexual aggression and drug addiction. I made a lot of really good friends in that program, and I started to come out of my shell. I don't know, I felt like in my final year, it was one of the best years ever, and not that it was without bumps, obviously, but I felt like I had come out of somewhere, and like I could be stronger than, like I was stronger, which is pretty much all I wanted. All anyone wants, really.
The anxiety is an everyday issue. It hasn't subsided whatsoever. It's definitely calmed down the sense of attacks, but it hasn't calmed down. I've grown accustomed to it. If my heart isn't beating fast in the morning, I'm like, something is wrong with me. I'd say mental health-wise, daily basis as well, I think I, find something wrong with every day. Something that won't get me out of bed, or something that will keep me inside behind my front door. The problem is that I don't see much of a future, which is why the panic is there. And it's because I feel as though with my current identity crisis going on, I don't know what to do. And that for me is really scary because I don't even know where to start.
You kind of have to learn to just give like 0 shits and focus on yourself, as hard as it is to do. Just find what makes you happy and go do that. Some people might not understand, and people might look at you like you are actually crazy, but if it's the only way you can get some sort of meaning or satisfaction out of your life, then it's what you have to do.
There's too many setbacks in society. Aside from doctors and people who are trained to deal with people who have issues like these, the rest of people treat it like a stigma. So let's say you're looking at your average family and there's a child, let's say, who has some sort of depression, qualities developing, you're noticing that he's isolating himself or he's doing, poorly in school. You can come in at a certain time and you can say, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything we can... Okay, hang on, I need to think about this. I need to think about this. I think if people weren't so afraid of it and started addressing things and problems right away instead of passing them off to different doctors, or, if you walked up to your kid and you said, what's making you upset? Or you walked up to your kid and you said, "What's making you anxious?" Or, you know, if you went into your doctor and you started by saying, "I'm feeling a little bit anxious," if the public wasn't so afraid of it, I don't think it would be such an issue. They need to make it so that it's not something that is scary and is recognized as an everyday issue. And if they want the issue to go down, if they want people to, you know, start getting better, if they want mental illness to go down in numbers, the percentage, then what you need to do is you need to start recognizing these people as people in society around you every day that are dealing with the same issues that you're dealing with. They just need that extra boost or that extra encouragement. And if you realize that they're not something to fear, then I think you'd have a much better, I don't know, a much better chance of accomplishing anything. I don't know. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's the fear that, like, that I see in my mother's eyes or in the eyes of other people when they see the lack of control that I have. If they sat down and got on a level of, you know, the level that I want to be at, which is in control, if they sat down and they said, "What's going on?" then maybe I could sit down and I could sort of figure it out. But, you know, they get scared, or they yell back, or they say, "Let's go to a doctor, let's go to a hospital, here's your medication."
That's why I don't like the pills. It's a cookie cutter solution. That's just fucking awful. It's like, you're born a certain way that you're born, and based on the chemicals in your brain, you might develop certain mental health issues. And some people might have really severe ones, and I'm not saying that they don't need the medication to survive in the society that we live in today. We're living in a society where you have to be the norm. And I mean, if you can survive in the society, if you survive and live your life, then just do it, I guess. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with this. You know, if you're born with severe mental health issues and you need the medication, then by all means, but we shouldn't be giving it out to everyone. I mean, that's just cookie cutter solution. It's shitty. And you know what, like, changing the chemicals in your brain's not helping anyone. I mean, eventually those pills will stop working. It's because you're the person that you are. You know, you've been given this imprint, and it's beautiful. Everyone is fucking great. And, I mean, they may not be as handsome as I am, but, I mean, everyone's got their own beauty to them.
By far, one of the greatest things you can do is just talk about it. I mean, having someone else not even just know, but like listen to what you have to say, it's definitely something that will help you through, because someone else that'll listen, you can go to them and it'll just change your world like no tomorrow. But in terms of friends, I mean, I don't know how I could be here without them. Without those people, honestly, I would have dropped out of Mac. I would have probably went to drugs. Would have just been a lazy boy at home, under depression, just total failure. I mean, without them, I would not be doing this right now. I guess what I want to say is, like, if ever there's a need, or even just the feeling of anxiety, just address it as soon as possible. Because, like, I let it hang for so long that it just built up to, like, breakdowns. And I feel like not being able to just address it as soon as possible just kind of fuels the flame. That's really what happens.
I almost find it easier to talk to somebody like that about my experiences than an actual therapist that I'm paying to talk to. And they just go, "So, just go, start here, tell me, talk." And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. For For me, it's just knowing that if my experiences could help anybody, then it's worth it to have shared it with them. I know that if I had somebody speak to me when I was 16, struggling, and said, you know, I used to deal with this. Nobody talks about mental health where I come from. In my neighborhood, my school, my family, no one. It's like a complete foreign concept. And so many people are struggling with it, and nobody talks about it. It wasn't a thing in the schools. We never had a mental health awareness week or anything like that when I was in high school. I almost wish that if somebody had taken the time to share a little bit of any difficult situation with me, it would have been like, okay, not everybody's life is as perfect as it seems on the outside, and I'm not the only one who's struggling like this. I've had so many days where I feel like absolute garbage. Just like there's no purpose to my life, there's no meaning, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'll ever find something that actually makes me feel valuable, makes me feel satisfied, that actually makes me feel happy. But yeah, you just kind of need to find what's important to you and go do that. Because at the end of the day, you can really only live for yourself, well, and the people you love. But if you're having a hard enough time making yourself happy, you can't make other people happy if you can't make yourself happy.
So, something that's been really terrifying for me is the fact that I'm probably terminal. Like, it's much more likely that this is going to kill me. And that is rough. Scary. Very, to think that this is it. This is what it's going to be. And there isn't a huge difference between my days that are bad and my days that are good. Like, from a medical point of view, they couldn't tell me if it was more likely or less likely. And, you know, it's even when I'm okay. I could go 2 days without sleeping, I could have a terrible nightmare, I could have a dissociative period and then wake up covered in blood, and it's just like, oops! Like, what? So, I have a very hard time with the idea of long-term. Very hard time with the idea of long-term. There's this book. It's called The Red Tree. And last year on my birthday, my brother gave me this beautiful naked tree and a whole bunch of red printed Japanese paper and leaf stencils. And when something went well for me, like I woke up on time, or I actually ate something, like tiny things, like I ate, I put on pants today, I went for a walk, I applied for camp. Like, it could be big things, it could be small things, whatever. If you were successful at something, I put a leaf on my tree. And now my tree looks like a tree. And then on those days when I woke up and I was just like, oh my God, I don't do anything right. It was just like, false. There are leaves all over your tree. And even if you don't know what specifically they're for, this is for you not failing at life. Because that's the thing. You don't recognize that that's not the only thing. You can't recognize that's not the only thing. You have to force yourself to see that there's other shit going on in your life besides being sad and afraid. And that is incredibly difficult. And I found that having something visual and something tactile worked incredibly well for me. Because there was never a question about whether or not I deserved to put a leaf on my tree. Like, I ate breakfast today. I deserve to put a leaf on my tree. No, it wasn't like there was some big ceremony. I didn't make some huge deal of it. It was just like, you did a thing. Here. It's stuck there. And then, when you are crushingly aware of how little you're capable of, and how much it doesn't matter. It's just like, no, you did a thing, and we're proud of you. So there. It's a really beautiful book.
I feel like I've made improvements because of the time that has gone by. I think if you had looked at this a year ago, I would have said no. Because when you go through situations, there are different stages. There's denial, there's, actually what I'm looking at are the stages of grief, because when you lose somebody or somebody abandons you, I deal with it in the terms of grief. So there's denial, there's depression, there are different stages that I had to go through to be able to even open my mind up to healing in any way. It actually took me a long time to even step out of my room. And when I finally did and went into the hospital program, that's when I felt like I took a step in the right direction, realizing that I had to do something with my life. But the problem is that I don't know what I want to do because I'm having a severe identity crisis. A little late in the game, in my opinion. I'm 23 years old and I have no idea what I want to do, and I feel like starting over is just going to destroy me. I need to figure out what I want to do. I need to figure out what program I want to take, and I need to go back to work so I can make money to move out. And when I do that, I'll feel better because I'll have a purpose. But, you know, the problem and the confusion right now isn't allowing me to make decisions. I'm only just considering all my options when I should be making decisions and sticking to them. But, you know, the problem is that I'm afraid of failing, or I'm afraid of hurt, or I'm afraid of anything from my past coming back again. So I don't want to move. I don't want to take a step forward or back.
Let me tell you a little something about myself when it comes to ADHD, which I find really fucking awesome. I'm lost in my thoughts all the time. All the time. I don't know if it's different for everyone, but when I can focus on something, and I don't know if it's legitimate, but there's like this hyper focus or something, super focus. I look at something and I fucking cannot stop thinking about it, and it consumes my world. I don't know if that's a coping mechanism. It's definitely not a coping mechanism. It might just be an aspect of it. I don't think I need a coping mechanism. I think it's awesome. I mean, I think it's good to be thinking of things all the time. It's not a weakness, or at least it never used to be. Some people might see it as a weakness, and I can understand it for like the people whose ADHD takes them to such a high where they literally can't sit still. And I can understand because like I'm always doing something with my hands or my feet. You know, I embrace it. I enjoy it. It's good. It's fun. I hope it is. If you're in a relationship with someone with mental health issues, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of problems. It's important to make them feel comfortable enough to be able to talk to you. That's key. Communication's important. We're humans, right? We talk to each other. It's what we're doing right now. We talk. And if you can create that level of comfort where it's so real, I mean, you understand where their behavior is stemming from, and you don't see it as someone who's got mental health issues. You stop judging it as, oh, that's because they have anxiety, or oh, that's because they have ADHD, and you kind of just see it as that's because of who they are. And everyone's special in their own way. We have a little mixture in our head that makes us defined, I guess. So, I mean, don't judge people based on that. There's nothing to judge. If you love someone with mental health issues, you don't use their issues to justify their behavior that you think is unacceptable. Then fuck you. Simple as that. Don't do it. Talk to them about it. Talk about their problems, and then you forget. You stop labeling it as someone with mental health issues, and you label it as who they are.
Loyal.
Intelligent.
Helpful.
Optimistic.
Sensitive. Empathetic.
Special. Amazing.
Accepting.
Really
amazing.
Handsome.
Gorgeous.
Supportive.
Stronger.
Grown up.
So, I don't know. I'm certainly not fixed, but I'm definitely better. Like, I feel like me now. I feel like me. I mean, I don't love everything about me, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing. It's not that black and white. It's not that cut and dry. There's always more. It's like I'm a composite of many parts and many different things. And all of those parts are going to touch people in different ways. Composite. And I don't know. I'm just really excited kind of to see where that takes me.
Oh, you fill my head with pieces of a song I can't get out. Can I be close to you?